So yesterday I created an episode of me making a track on the spot. If you haven't watched that yet, do go back and check it out, as this episode might not make much sense out of context. If you're curious about the inspiration behind this video and how I went about mastering the track, then do stick around till the end. But let's dive in to the template that I used. Now, of course, all of the elements that I created yesterday are available to download over at the Patreon. I've pretty much pre-prepared all my sound selection and plugins in the order that I'm going to use things. I started off by making a drone. I used these three sounds. First of all, just a little bit of tape hiss, then one piano note, and then this weird kind of bubbly synth note too. This was great to throw into Inner Ocean's device, which I have a whole video on. You can basically throw in the sounds that you want to use, change the levels, change the pitching and the speed to the sound that you want to create. Creating a drone for the video keeps the episode free of any dead air and creates a key for me to compose to. To get that dreamy sound, I actually used my microcosm pedal, which I reviewed on the channel maybe a couple of years ago. This is kind of fiddly and you have to grab an external audio effect device, route your audio out of input 3 and 4 of my Focusrite into my microcosm pedal, and then out of my microcosm into my Focusrite in channels 1 and 2 to be able to hear what you're looping back. Coupled everything with a little bit of EQ just to get rid of any rumbles, and I'm using the utility on every track so that I can keep all my tracks at 0. This is going to come in handy when I go and use my MPD in the background a little bit later. From here, I designed some chords using Scalar, and this is super easy to do. We come into Scalar, we've got our different presets here. I went for cinematic and sad ending, but as you can see over here, just pitch the semitones up 3 to be in keeping with that drone that I created. So once I had those chords in, it was great for the video because it meant that I didn't have to compose to a metronome. Again, it keeps the monotony out of the video and it keeps the narrative moving forward. You can hear that there's some delays in here, and this is actually a trick that I learned just this week that I'll feature in future episodes as well. Not many people know this, I certainly didn't. You can grab an instrument rack and layer up multiple instruments in that rack. And that means you can play more than one instrument at once. You'll notice that I've got the intimate sound of Scalar here with just a bit of EQ, nothing else. And then below, I've got the upright piano, which is very quiet, and it has a high pass filter on it, delays, and a compressor. And this means that I can keep all of that nice bubbly delay stuff that's also going to keep me in time lower in the mix. The capture record button at the top of the screen is really going to be the hero of the episode. This meant that I could actually play along with the track, hit that capture record button at the top of the screen, and it would basically populate my MIDI track as if by magic. Once I had one clip in, I duplicated that track in real time and then just created a variation of those notes, so it just sounded a little bit more fresh as we went into the next couple of bars. Underneath, I've got the ample guitar. I love the semi-hollow guitar. I use it in most of my videos, and I've got it set to a line delay to make the sound wider, and RC20 to give it more of an analog sound, a little bit of humanization with the wobble there. Again, another little bit of filtered delay, and we're moving on. Very simple pattern with the guitar here. And the same goes for the Palmers. DJ Empirical, a lovely community member, put me onto Palmas, which is basically a clap VST. And before the video, I just went about creating a bunch of polyrhythms. And this 6/8 polyrhythm, which I definitely misnamed when I created the video, was perfect. It just kind of plays under everything else that you've heard being recorded into the episode. Underneath all this, just as a backup layer, we've got the long all-in-one brass quartet, which is free from Spitfire, and you can find it in packs. And if you go down to available packs, you can download it absolutely free. OTT, EQ8, chorus ensemble, and just this endless Arctic presets. All the reverb that I'm using in this particular template are all presets because I just want to get to making music quickly. That was the main aim of this video. And then I go on to Studio Drummer. Now, one of the things you'll notice in the episode on Studio Drummer and on the Ample soundtrack is that I've got this -39 millisecond delay and -100 millisecond delay. And that's because these two instruments are super latent. There's a lot of latency when you're recording in the instrument. So a great way to measure how much latency there is so I can output the right amount of latency in playback for you guys is just to duplicate that instrument, freeze it, and then flatten that track. And when I flatten that track, you'll be able to see how much space there is before that instrument plays. So let's turn up the gain with this. And if we highlight the space between that first bar and when we see the audio value, you'll see 0.050. So this actually means that I should have minus 50 milliseconds of delay, but I just like the humanization of it coming in a little late in the video. It's a great tip that, again, I only found out this week. There was such a problem with getting Studio Drummer to work with Ableton, and there was so much latency that in the video I was actually listening to the Studio Drummer standalone software, which is why in the episode you can see that this channel is actually muted when I record arm it. That allowed me to just listen to the real-time audio of the drums and record to Ableton whilst capturing the MIDI sequence of the video. Once I was over at the drums, you saw me using the MPD back here, and that's because at the top of the track in this group, I have a clean channel and an effects channel, just with a delay, auto filter, and dub reverb on that particular chain. And as I scrub through the track, I go from that clean audio to something that's a little bit more washed out. This is a tool that I use time and time again in my live performances, and that's why I use the MPD, and I haven't yet gone to like the machine or the push. I just love working with faders. But if you're curious about where this inspiration came from and why I'm suddenly playing drums on my channel after about 300 episodes, it was just because I've fallen really out of love with my current workflow methods. It's become very formulaic. And I actually saw a comment from our beloved Discord member, Jono N, who wrote in our closed track surgery group, which is, by the way, for all Patreon members. It's where we can share our works in progress and gain feedback from myself and the community members. He often shares so many finished tracks, and I just asked, how do you get through these tracks so quickly? And he said, well, since becoming a full-time father and having a full-time job, I only get a couple of hours per week to work on music. So when everybody's asleep, I sit down at Ableton, I'm intentional with my actions, and I make use of templates. Now, I create loads of templates for the Patreon, but when I sit down to make my own music, I normally start from scratch. And there's so many things that you and I do inside the DAW time and time again that we're doing from scratch. And that's why I thought, you know what, I'll just set up a template with the sounds that I want to use in order of what I want to use first. And I'll have the plugins on the channels already. So everything's sounding pretty much finished when I start creating the music. And then that way it was just a stream of consciousness. It took me 4 minutes to hit record and finish the whole track. As you saw it in the video yesterday, I just had multiple cameras set up. It took me back to a simpler time when I knew very little about music production as a student at school, when I just kind of used to have my room a mess, cables running everywhere, and I was just trying to capture as much music as I could kind of output from my imagination. And it was just a really fun way to compose, and I think the comments reflected that. So thank you so much for your support. I'll try and do more of that in future, so just look out for that kind of no talking themed thumbnail to separate it from the rest of my videos. And I actually mastered this video with an AI tool from DistroKid. DistroKid's been our sponsor for a long time and is sponsoring this video. And I used Mixia. So to make the video dynamically loud and sound all polished, I just threw the audio into Mixia's device, to which you can EQ it, level it, and output a lovely master. That was it. If you want to get 7% off of your first year using DistroKid, I would highly recommend it. It's how I put out all of my music to hundreds of streaming services. Thank you so much for tuning in yesterday and today, guys, and to my special family over at the Patreon. If you do want to see more in future, please hit that subscribe button, because only 7% of my audience are currently subscribed. And I think that's such a shame. We've been doing this together for so many years. So if you've seen me more than once, hit that button. But thank you once again. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you next time.